New York's asylum seeker situation seeing several developments. The state lawmakers call for federal action in securing the southern border. We'll hear from a New York congressman on how national policy will impact migrants right here in New York State. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Governor Hochul is calling on New York's Republicans and the U.S. House of Representatives to pass a bipartisan legislation on immigration reform. This as the pressure continues to mount in the ongoing asylum seeker situation. The federal bipartisan deal would make asylum laws tougher and provide $1.4 billion to states and localities. Those calls coming as the city proposes distributing some 500 prepaid debit cards to migrant families as part of a new pilot program to help them save money. Also in New York City, the mayor asking for the state to cover half of the city's costs associated with the influx of all the migrants.
The lawmakers and the governors, they have been partners, and we're looking forward. They know how serious this crisis is, and our concern is that the federal government is not doing its job. That is the number one issue. No city or state should have to pick up this task.
Joining us now to give additional insight into the current progress in the ongoing migrant process is Congressman Mark Molinaro, Republican representing the 19th district here in the great state of New York. Congressman, thank you for coming on.
Glad to be with you. Back again. Thanks.
I feel like for a Republican in New York State, this is a target-rich environment where you could take aim at a lot of things that are not going well with this migrant crisis. Where do you want to begin in terms of numbers, or in terms of do we jump right in with the prepaid cards, which seem to be getting a lot of attention in New York City?
Yeah, let me unwind that just a bit and to say out loud that, this isn't about scoring political points. We have a real crisis at our border. We will have expected to see some 12 million individuals cross the American border. 90% of them likely don't qualify for legal access, meaning they don't qualify for the asylum seeking process. And because of executive action taken by the president, now quite frankly, came into office and undid some of the executive authority that did restrict access, and because of that, really has incentivized illegal border crossing. That has been made even worse by states that have said, you're sanctuary. So New York identifies itself as a sanctuary. There are thousands upon thousands that are being transported here. Yes, some by governors, but 80% of those individuals who are being transported to states like New York are being transported by the federal government, the decision of this administration to simply detain and then release. It's kind of like cashless bail in New York. Whether you have legal right to get asylum, whether you have legal right to enter this country, the federal government currently, this administration, assumes everybody does, puts them on buses and planes and sends them to other parts of the country expecting that they will go through their vetting process someplace else. Surprisingly, not. Most don't. And so we have this compounding crisis that needs to be confronted by stricter security at the border and then a clean and rigorous asylum vetting, background vetting process that occurs at the border. But here we are. Rather than addressing the root cause, you have the governor of the state of New York, you have the mayor of the city of New York simply taking state and federal resources away from the services and care and kids and programs that we demand and expect, and placing them in the hands of individuals who, quite frankly, if they have a legal right to enter this country, we should identify that. They should be brought into that process. But if they don't, they should be turned back and not allowed to enter America.
Were you surprised? You mentioned the effect on people in New York when the kids were told don't come to school because we're going to use the school to house some people, even if it's temporarily. Did that surprise you that it's gotten to that extreme? And the mayor, in some respects, to his defense, his hands do feel tied because there's not enough room. He's taken in too many.
Well, the mayor made a decision. They could abandon the sanctuary city process, which would at least disincentivize and then allow state and city, city enforcement and others to work more collaboratively with federal enforcement and border security and immigration and naturalization. So that's a decision the mayor made that does currently incentivize some of this. But yeah, it's an absolutely unacceptable position. It's why, by the way, I sponsored the Schools Not Shelters Act, which passed the House, bipartisan adoption of that bill, which basically says you can't turn schools into shelters. And this isn't to be cruel. Those schools in many of the communities, and by the way, in upstate New York too, maybe they're in inner cities, maybe they're in rural communities, where the schools are providing not only regular education, but after school activities, access to a nutritious lunch, services for those with disabilities. They're not built nor meant to be regular shelters, and to displace kids who need that care, families who expect it, is just not acceptable. And so rather, what we need is the mayor and Governor Hochul to turn with us at the president and demand that he take executive action, use his authority to limit access, and then work with Congress, Republicans, Democrats, senators, and members of the House to develop a plan that more restrictively contains access, right? Border security and a robust and vigorous asylum vetting process at the border. Do those things, and you confront the root causes of the challenge that helps us not only to drive down the numbers, but to more effectively welcome and vet those who have legal right to enter the country.
But realistically, if the president took your position, if the Democrats like Chuck Schumer took your position, don't they have a problem with their left flank now, that they have to worry about people getting upset that they've now pivoted too much to the center, we'll say, and they lose those people, or maybe they don't come out on election day in November and they lose a bigger situation, which is the presidential?
Well, listen, there's two things I'd say to that. One, there are folks on the far right, or I shouldn't say far right, but there are certainly folks on the right who say, don't come to a deal. Don't agree. It's better to leave the issue. That is cynical and unacceptable. It is equally unacceptable to suggest that those on the left should just not collaborate because they may lose some support. That's not how we solve problems in America. And by the way, I come from a part of the state, upstate New York. We know what it's like to have people tell us, you can't do this, you can't solve this. We have the answers. We'd rather have to get together, Republicans, Democrats, senators, House, with the president's leadership, put aside the politics, and focus on a solution. But I want to say this. I was not elected to simply accept what the Senate thinks is a good idea, any more than senators were elected to simply accept what I think is a good idea. That's why we have two houses of the Congress. They need to work together in order to come to a conclusion, a decision. I believe our position is best, certainly, stricter border security, robust and vigorous asylum vetting process. The Senate has yet to adopt a policy, and I understand politics plays a role in it, but we can negotiate from here. And rather than demonizing our friends, as Governor Hochul has decided to do, rather than hyperbole and rhetoric, let's focus on a solution, which is why, by the way, my Republican colleagues in the New York delegation have asked the governor, come to D.C., let's work together, let's identify a real path. Her answer was simply agree to what the Senate does and I'll talk to you later. None of this is leadership, none of it. And Americans in America deserve a real solution to what is a catastrophic problem that undermines American sovereignty and overwhelms the services and care and support that we need for American citizens and others who deserve that from us.
Mark, we're down to less than a minute, but if this doesn't get solved, it doesn't seem like it's going to get solved before November. You got Mayor Adams saying we've got too many people, we have nowhere to put them, and they all want the federal government to step in with money. Is Congress going to at least fund some of this in New York State, do you think, doing some kind of a carve-out bill that will throw some money to the localities here to help with this crisis, or does that not get done because it's all one big pie, one baked in with one big pie?
Here's the problem. The answer rests with the president. There are no new dollars needed for the president to exercise emergency authority now. Congressman Pat Ryan, Democrat, Congressman Mark Molinaro, Republican, made this clear with others. The president can act now. He can take advantage of executive authority, and he can provide the resources necessary to contain the problem.
So he doesn't even need your help. He can do it himself. All right. Congressman Mark Molinaro.
Not to address the emergency, but long-term solution, right. Yes. The emergency, no.
All right. Congressman, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again in the weeks ahead.
You bet. Be well.
New rules are taking effect for when you can use a credit card to pay for items and those surcharges. When we come back, we'll talk with a business expert on the impact this new rule will have on businesses and the protections in place for you. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Starting today, Sunday the 11th, New York businesses will have to follow some new rules when they charge you an extra fee for paying with a credit card. Under the recently passed bill, stores will be required now to post the highest price consumers might pay when they're using the credit card. They will also have to tell you what you'd pay if you used another payment method like cash or a debit card. The idea here is to be more transparent about prices and fees. Any business who does not follow the rules could get fined $500. Joining us now to give additional insight on the impact this new legislation is going to have on all of us, Ashley Renslow, Director of the National Federation of Independent Business. Ashley, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
For those who don't know what your group is, I don't know how you fit that on a business card. Explain what it is you do, your group you represent.
Sure. So we represent small independently owned businesses. We have more than 11,000 across New York State. So from the tip of Long Island all the way out to Buffalo. And these are the businesses that everyone thinks about when they think of small businesses. Your local convenience stores, mechanics, small retail operations, landscapers, anything you can imagine, that's who we represent.
So if you're a dry cleaner and you don't like some law, you're not going to be able to lobby Albany, but you join a group like yours and maybe a bunch of you are affected by the law and you guys would represent them and kind of lobby on their behalf?
Exactly, correct. So small businesses, regardless of industry or sector, they don't have the time, the resources, the manpower to have a designated lobbyist. So they join a group like NFIB, and I am their voice in Albany. So, we take a lot of pride in that, making sure that we represent the small business voice and advocating for the issues that are most important to them.
Okay, let's jump in with the news today, which is the surcharge, new law. Explain what's happening, what was it before, and what's it going to be now, if you know what I mean.
Yes, so it's a little bit confusing, and it stems from years of court challenges over what states can and can't do in terms of regulating businesses and their ability to pass on credit card surcharges or swipe fees. And New York previously had guidance, but nothing that was codified in state law. So what we are now seeing is an actual bill was passed, and we have state law that dictates what businesses can and can't do when they are passing along a surcharge to a customer. But it's not all that much different than what was already in guidance previously.
So what's the change people are going to see at a store? They are going to be required to post what the charge is with the surcharge and what the cash price is, and it has to be made very clear how you pay will affect what you pay?
Yes, exactly. So instead of walking into a store and seeing that, a sign at the register that says there is a 3% surcharge if you pay with credit card, businesses won't be allowed to do that anymore. And it's going to be very much specific on the actual price of a good or service. So if you do, as a business, want to pass along the credit card swipe fee or surcharge, you're going to have to clearly list either every item, there's a credit card price and a cash price, or alternatively, what you can do instead is just list at the register or wherever that there is a cash discount.
Oh, so it's almost flipping the script a little bit, isn't it? Where, like, look, if you want to pay cash for this, thing of coffee at a Stewart shop or a convenience store, it's going to be this price, or it's going to be 3% less or something along. Am I reading that right?
Exactly. So, you as a store owner or merchant, if you would like to offer a discount for people who pay with cash so that you, the retailer, don't have to pay the credit card processing fees, you can go ahead and extend that along to your customers and say, here's a 3%, 4%, whatever cash discount. You just can't do it the other way anymore. You can't say that I'm tacking on 3 or 4% if you're using a credit card.
Can they not offer any discount and say, look, this is the price is the price is the price, and that's it?
Correct. So you could instead just raise all of your prices, and that accounts for the swipe fees you have to pay as the retailer, and there's no discount, and there's no additional charge either. Your prices are your prices. So that is also an option. And I think that's the option that ultimately many businesses will probably go in, because there is a lot of behind the scenes work you have to do, right? They have to change their point of sale systems, and do you want 2 prices for every single item that you sell? So there is an ease to either just setting one price and that's the price, or offering a cash discount rather than having to advertise 2 prices for everything that you're offering.
Will this affect gas too? Because I know we're talking about, the place I've seen it very pronounced is right at the pump. Sometimes they will literally say, here's your credit card price, here's your cash price. And of course, it seems like nobody carries cash anymore, so you're always paying the higher price.
Yes, so what you see oftentimes at gas stations, you're exactly right, is that credit card price and that cash price, and that won't change. Gas stations, what they're doing now is still in compliance with this new law, so I think you'll see that continue.
Now, what was your position, your group on this? Were you in favor of this change just to simplify it for the stores and businesses?
So we did not have a position on this issue because really what it was doing was codifying what was already in guidance into state law. We do have concerns always that anytime you place additional regulations or additional requirements on businesses, it's much harder for small businesses to comply. Bigger chain stores, big box stores, they have all of the manpower to be able to go in and execute any sort of new law or regulation. So anytime you're making it a little bit more difficult to do business, a little bit more complicated, we always take issue with that. But I will say that the state, the governor's office, the Department of State have put together a very good education campaign for businesses, really easy to understand. If you go to the Department of State's website, there's a video small business owners or any business owner can watch. There are easy to read one-pagers that lay it all out. So I do commend the state for doing a very good, clear, robust public education campaign.
I'm assuming, too, before they fix this, that not every credit card company or whoever you're swiping with charge the same surcharge, right? I could see somebody charging 2 cents per transaction, somebody charging 3.8 cents. Was that also an issue here where it was all over the map?
So that's true. The swipe fees that are not consistent across whoever the financial institution or vendor is. Those vary based on the type of credit card that you are using. And that's not going to change. The credit card networks still have the ability to set their surcharge rates, and those rates vary. So when businesses were passing along, say, a 3% surcharge, they were probably doing an average of what, right? They might pay some individual swipe fees that are higher, they might pay some that are lower, and they were averaging them out. But yes, the swipe fees do vary, and that is determined by the credit card networks and financial institutions.
It sounds like this new law is going to make it easier for the stores and the customers and everybody, so it's a win-win across the board. Ashley Ranslow, National Federation of Independent Business, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We do appreciate it. Thank you. The Capital Region will have a new representative in the state Senate next year. When we come back, I'll be sitting down with the longest tenured senator, Neil Breslin, looking back at his time in office. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. When it comes to the state Senate, no current senator has served longer than Democrat Neil Breslin. 14 times he ran, 14 times he won. They weren't even close. Unlike many politicians, Breslin is not loud, usually avoids the TV cameras. All the more reason then for me to head down to the Capitol and take this shy senator down memory lane.
My mother would say that if you started broadcasting it, you did it for the wrong reasons, which is true.
If Neil Breslin had a motto, it might be speak softly and carry a big dream.
I didn't think I'd win the first race.
His started in 1996 when Clinton was president. Gas cost $1.20, and a little-known lawyer named Breslin ran for state Senate. His promise to voters?
Try to get your job done and be respected by your peers, not by the press, not by your neighbors, but by the people you work with on a day-in, day-out basis.
For 28 years, he served the Capital Region, working with 6 different governors. Any favorites?
Kathy Hochul is a wonderful person, but her legacy is still out there. Andrew Cuomo got a lot of things done that maybe others couldn't. George Pataki was a wonderful person to deal with. We had a very nice relationship. So you try to take them all on their own terms, be as nice as you can to them, and do your business.
As for the not-so-nice part of politics, he says no thanks.
But there's people who look at me and go, oh, you're a Democrat. And there's Democrats looking at a Republican saying, you're a Republican. And I sense it as soon as I talk to them. And I ain't part of them. And I like the ones who take me for what I am.
What he is 81 and ready to relax.
I haven't ever really smelled the flowers. And this gives me an opportunity to read things I haven't read, maybe travel a little, and do a lot more not-profit work.
Stick around, back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, the discussion surrounding education spending here in New York continues. Lawmakers and officials from SUNY and CUNY systems speaking at the state capitol just this week. SUNY's chancellor saying, well, while he is grateful the governor proposed $54 million for the SUNY operations cost, ultimately he would like to see more in that final state budget.
We are hopeful that the state will step in to address the $86 million that it will cost to fulfill the new contract with UUP, our main faculty union. Well-deserved raises, a fiscally responsible contract, but we really need the state's help with that $86 million.
We'll be sure to keep an eye on the spending developments before the budget is due, which of course is April the 1st. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. Quick reminder, don't forget you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's a full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 television stations across the great state of New York.